Hi guys, so today I decided to create this video. Actually, I want to create a video like this every week. We call it Book of the Week, and it's basically me gonna be talking about the books I read and what I learned from them and what you can learn from them. So I've just finished reading this book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's an amazing book and it's just a great book. Now, I've written some things I want to talk about in this video. I like want to address so that I don't just like talk about random shit, but actually address some points. So first, why did I choose to read this book? This book has been recommended as like it's the best-selling book. Basically, it's right. Let me read it. It's an international bestseller, and it's been highly recommended by like many people. And if you go to Amazon, I think it's like the best-selling book in the business category, like the general business category, not the subcategory, like the general one. So it's one of the best books. And the writer of this book, Daniel Kahneman, he's a psychologist in cognitive psychology. I think he won Nobel Prize for his findings that he has written in his book, in that book. Him and his colleague called Amos, they're psychologists who worked in Israel, I think, or somewhere, or America. And it took them, I think, 8 years to come up with this research, and they condensed all this information and written it in this amazing book. So, why wouldn't I read this book? I mean, I would be a fool not to read a book like this. So, it's a great book. The downside of it is actually quite long. It's like 400 pages, and the letters are quite small, so it might be discouraging to start reading this book and finishing it. It took me about, I think, 3 weeks to finish it. So, um, probably about 3 weeks. And it was a bit hard actually. It wasn't that easy to go through it, but it's amazing. You probably need to read it. You probably need to read it at a much slower pace than other books because the information is so dense, and there's a lot to take from it. So yeah, it's a great book. Now the second point I want to address is what unique, what's unique about this book. I said, Nobel. It's not only international bestseller. It's actually Nobel Prize winner. So, that's why it's a really great book. What's unique about it is that it talks about well, I'm not sure how to answer that question really, but I think if you're really into psychology, if you're really into understanding how the human brain works, then that's a really great book to read. As long as with other things that are really important. For example, if you're in personal finance, if you like economics, behavior psychology, that's like a great book that can reveal so many secrets, not so many secrets, so many things that you kind of oblivious to. And by knowing these things, it kind of puts you ahead of your competition in terms of your thinking, the way you think, right? Because it gives you like the tools, the strategies of that other people are missing, that other people are not using in their business, or just in the general life in general. So yeah, it's a great book. And what have I learned from it? I mean, it's really difficult for me to summarize everything I've learned from this book because it's just so long and there's so many theories. But I'd say the main theme of the book is that it basically talks about cognitive biases. It talks about how our brain is not as rational as you think it is, and the way we see the world is not as real as you think it is. So it shows you that when it comes to judging probabilities, we actually come up with these heuristics. We basically are shortcuts to find the best answer to these probabilities, to these questions that are related to probabilities or to uncertainty, right? And in answering these questions, we relate to these heuristics, which are shortcuts to make the answers much easier. At the same time, because we simplify the answer so much, sometimes we come up with wrong answers, systemic errors. We call them biases, right? So it sheds light on all these biases that the human brain comes up with. And basically in the book, it talks about, the book is called The Thinking Fast and Slow, and it talks about the two systems, the system one thinking and system two thinking. System one thinking, it says that, our brain thinks in two ways, either system one, which is more intuitive. For example, 1 plus 1. You don't think it's two. You don't calculate, oh, 1 plus 1 plus 1. It just comes to your mind. It's an intuitive answer, intuitive judgment. And then you have system two, which is more of a systemic thinking. Basically, that's the one which basically stops and thinks of the question, thinks of the problem, and comes with a more rational decision, right? And the whole book is actually focused on system one thinking. on on our intuitive judgment and how we actually judge things according to our intuitive mind, which is actually not as rational as we think. There's so many biases that we actually that we indulge. There's so many biases that we commit, but we're not actually aware of them. So this book actually sheds a light on these biases, and by knowing these biases, you're much more able to predict more in a more certain way, in a more not a more certain, so a more accurate way than you would normally do. Now the advantage of this is that because you can become more accurate in your judgment. Well, okay, yeah, that's one point. Now another point I want to talk about is, yeah, that's one point. I don't want to go off tangent. Another point that really I liked about this book. Right, let me search my memory. I'm trying to formulate this in my head. Is that right? So the idea just slipped my head. So another point I want to talk. So another point I want to talk about is this book, which is great. Yeah, there you go. I got the idea now. So another point I want to talk about this book that is actually great is that it shows you how we actually, the world is not as consistent as it looks or as we think it is, right? Reality is so much different than what we think it is in our heads. Like in our heads, it's like Disneyland, right? And reality is just so different. And until you start applying, you found out the reality is so much different than what you think it is in your head, right? So an example would be, I don't know, an example would be if you, if you have like a great idea that you want to apply, and you're like an entrepreneurial idea and you think it's going to be like great and you're so optimistic about it. The thing is, it's great and it's amazing. It might be great and amazing in your head, but until you start applying it in real life, you might find out that it's one of the most stupidest ideas or no one really cares about it and it solves no problem, right? On contrary, you can have not a mediocre idea. Once you start applying it, you're going to be like, you find out like, wow, it's amazing, people love it, and it's like, it's the bomb. So you're in your head, you basically, it talks about how people or how human beings they create this sort of like very optimistic sort of reality in their head. That is just so coherent with everything around them. They sort of make up a perfect story that fits their reality, And he talks about, and he says that life is not actually as coherent as you think it is. Life is actually more randomness and luck is actually involved in life than you actually think there is. So there's actually more luck and uncertainty. And the reason why we try to make sense of everything around us is because we have a craving need to be certain. We have craving need to have clarity in our lives, and if we don't have clarity and certainty, then we kind of like we're not in ease. Yeah, so we feel more in ease when we're actually more certain and more clear in our lives. And our brain sometimes will come up with stories that are not right and not true, that we believe we think is true. Reality is the reality actually is more uncertain and there's more luck involved. So yeah, if you take it from that perspective, you'll be less prone to biases that your mind creates. He talks about very important stuff. If you're an investor, there's an important chapter called risk policy. To be honest, I completely forgot what it talks about in this chapter. It was really exciting. I wrote some notes. I might talk about it in the next video, but it's some really interesting stuff that opened my eyes. Oh, right. He talks about portfolio diversification and why people say, oh, diverse your portfolio, and how to actually have more emotional stability when it comes to investment. A lot of people, because he says, I haven't really gotten into investment, but I've read about it, and they talk about how a lot of people are emotionally unstable when it comes to investment, because they keep checking their stocks, whatever they invested in, they keep checking if it's going up or going down, they're losing or they're winning. And because they have this sort of like, the emotional fluctuations, they play around with the stocks and they lose in the end. They don't actually leave it for a sufficient amount of time until they see if it's going to be profitable or not. And he says the reason that happens is because of also a bias in our head. It's called narrow framing as opposed to broad framing. So narrow framing, he says that we judge events very individualistically, like on an individual basis. So we take one event and just judge it on a very individual basis, whereas we don't actually see the whole picture. We don't judge it compared to other events. from different reference points. So when it comes, for example, to a portfolio of investment, you have more than one investment, more than one stock you've invested, maybe 10, 12. But the problem is a lot of people are so worried about this one stock that is losing, and you should lose some. I mean, that's the whole point of investment and trading. You know, you win some and you lose some, but people are just, they can't deal with losses. So he talks about how you should view it from a broad frame, that you will lose in this stock, but your overall winning, your overall chances of winning and making a profit is just higher, you know. So instead of actually, so he talks about, instead of, you know, instead of checking your balance every day and seeing if, you know, if you're losing or winning, you should just leave it for a quarter, at least for 3 months, and then at the end check your balance and see the overall profit, because that's the real reflection of the quality, you know, of the profitability of the stock, or of that diverse portfolio, right? It's not the individual investments, but it's the group of investments, and that's why he called joint evaluation. We tend to be more accurate when we judge things from a perspective, a joint evaluation perspective. So when we look at more than one resource and judge them, you know, and take basically, because when we, yeah, and basically judge them in a joint evaluation basically manner. So maybe I didn't really explain it the best way I can explain it, but you know, if you read the book, you're gonna find it a very, very helpful in that manner, like in that area, if you're interested. And investment really helped me to understand a couple of things. Another one which is actually very important for me is called the entrepreneurial optimism bias. He calls it optimism bias, basically. And it's true. Very you know, business people and entrepreneurs, they're very positive. I'm very positive. You know, whenever we dealt with negative things, we always find ways to you know, to create a positive situation out of the negative, and you know, to empower ourselves to keep pushing and keep going forward. However, he talks about a planning fallacy, which a lot of entrepreneurs actually commit, and I'm a victim of that. And it's basically just being very optimistic about, you know, about projects, you know, about the time scale and the budget of a project, you know. Instead of looking at the base rate and previous projects and the average, and taking the average of previous projects and then reflecting back to our project and coming up with an accurate probability, what entrepreneurs tend to do is they tend to neglect everything. They see how the project is going right now. If it's going great and you're getting great results right now, they tend to overpredict the future and say, "Oh, you know, it's going." You know, when they ask the question, "What do you know? When do you think you're going to finish this project?" And instead of, you know, looking at, you know, statistics of base rate statistics, they will come up with their own conclusion that because it's good now, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna finish really soon. But they're not taking into account all the future obstacles, all the periods where you don't feel like working, all the maybe some, you don't take like account a probability if someone in your family dies or your friend gets hit by a car. Like, you don't take any of these probabilities, but you judge the prediction based on how it's going right now. So that's a big bias, because we just tend to judge we tend to predict things based on the current situation, and that's not true the whole time, because you haven't taken into consideration what's going to happen a year, 2 years from now, when you work on another project. So he talks about a better way to actually judge time and budget, is to actually look at, how does he describe it? He describes it, to look at the base rate. So to look at other projects that people are doing, other projects, and how long it took them. Take the average of these projects that like similar to yours, right? And then use the average along with your expectation, and then use both of these. And this way you can actually regress more to the mean, to the more accurate result, rather than just basing it on your you know, on your judgment, purely on your, because your judgment is much more biased than what you think it is. So that eliminates optimism. That puts you in a better frame, more accurate results. That tells you, that shows you, because you know, it shows you if you need, you know, if you need more, you know, a certain X amount of money, or more time. So that prepares you more for the future, because if you're not prepared for the future and you're hit with all these difficulties, you know, it's easy to be discouraged, because the reality, or the reality that you hit with is so incoherent with what you thought the project is going to go like. So that's a big discouragement, and a lot of people fail. A lot of people actually give up because of this, because they think it's like, oh, they failed. Well, it's not they failed; it's that they're just so optimistic, and they haven't really you know, their mind sort of tricked them to predict the right thing. They've just not haven't done correct predictions. So that's a very good point to hammer down. There's a lot of things you can. I mean, this book is an amazing book, and anyone who's in business as an entrepreneur, I mean, you must read this book. It's just like a must read. Just go through it. I know it's quite hard. It's like 400 pages, but it's one of these books that you can't miss. It's like the foundation, the fundamentals of cognitive psychology. Some of the fundamentals of psychology, I would say. I might give a biased review to this book because I love cognitive psychology and it's an area I'm passionate about. But you know, I mean, this book is not only an international bestseller; it's a Nobel Prize winner. I mean, the information that has been put in this book is I think it's 8 years worth of research from and this research has been done in the best universities in Harvard and Princeton, and based on like real life experiments and data. So it's not just hypothesis and talk; it's just actually based on experiments and a lot of studies that have been done. And you know, it's just an amazing book. You're not gonna find something. You're not gonna find a book that rich in content as this one. So I highly recommend reading this book. And yeah, I think that's it for this video. Actually, let me see if I have something else to say. How can I help? Yeah. So yeah, that's basically it. Give it a read. Give it a go. I mean, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on the internet. Go on Google. Just type it in. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel. My accent is all over the place. So it's Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, winner of the Nobel Prize. Right? Amazing book. So he says, buy it fast, read it slow, will change the way you think. It did change the way I think. Truly did change the way I think. So get it, read it, and tell me what you think. Write it in the comments below what you think, how it helped you, what ideas did you take from it. You know, did it excite you? I was really excited when I was reading the book. And yeah, tell me what you think. If you like this video, then click the like button and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you in the next week's video of Book of the Week. Alright? See you later. Bye.